is Monday. RawMikeRichards.com, broadcasting live from the DKI studios in downtown Toronto, 234 King Street East out of the Pacific Junction Hotel. Coming up today, we're thrilled to have Senator Larry Smith. Yes, that Larry Smith. Formerly of the Montreal Alouettes. I guess you could also say the Bishop Gators. Former commissioner of the league, in which we can talk probably in some pretty good detail about the U.S. expansion, his take on that, and of course, his life now as a senator. The news yesterday of Ray Emery in Hamilton at 35 years of age, drowning in Hamilton Harbor. It was probably really shocking to hear that as it came across. And the circumstances, again, there's just a lot of details that people don't know. But when you hear the police, Dave, call it misadventure, it just, I guess we'll find out as details will come out. But a sad story nonetheless. Also, as we take a look, the wrap-up of the Calgary Stampede, the Dash for Cash. And so basically, it's kind of like NASCAR. That's how chuck wagons work. So you have the 36 guys who go out there and they race for the 9 days, get to a semifinal. Then the top 4 times they dash for $100,000. It is great theater, and people are saying, "What are you talking about?" No, wait till you see it. It is awesome stuff. And of course, we'll also continue to talk about a little bit of Major League Baseball and how people aren't going. All-Star break, Dave.
The quietest time of the day, year, summer. Dog days of summer, is that officially it? The dog days?
Oh, I think so. And
this is the week usually people book off.
Well, I normally have never worked this time of year ever. I don't think I've ever talked about the Tour de France.
Nope.
Not done that. Any of the tennis, as you know.
Nope.
And look, the one thing, and I still don't tire of it. I talk about, the jumping of the shark of the slam dunk competition. So we have the home run derby. But for some reason, I don't tire of that.
Nope.
Do you?
I'm okay with that. You could hit home runs all day long and I'll watch.
It's like watching a guy, like a long drive competition.
Yep.
Those freaks who get out there with the extra long, those.
My favorite part of golf, swinging the club as fast as you can.
No, we've seen that.
That's the only 18 shots in a afternoon are my favorite 18.
Yeah. When the greenskeepers see Dave coming, they don't like him. They're not big on the 250-mile-an-hour swing. There's like, Dave, if you just slow it down, no. I will not.
It takes away from those 18 strokes.
It's that moment of whatever is going on in Dave's life, whatever the frustration is. Maybe is it the pterodactyls?
Well, the pterodactyls are champions again.
Okay, they're champions again. Yeah, but maybe there's a strikeout, or maybe there was a slide that was poorly done.
Yep.
This comes out in that swing.
It does.
There's a lot of DJ styles, I think, in that swing.
Yeah, we miss Rusty this time too.
Well, guess who is back?
Yeah, exactly.
From his lavish vacation and I'm not making this up. He went to Sweden, young Russell did. And now you are back from your excursion. Tell me about the craziness that ensued upon you meeting the Swedish people.
Well, Sweden was the first week. That was pretty exciting. We watched the Sweden-Germany game in Stockholm, the group stage that Germany, was the Heartbreakers against Sweden in the last minute.
You got the last laugh, though.
Yeah, that was it was a lot of fun. Showed up. My mom came, surprised my brother, so that was pretty cool. She came just for the Sweden part of the trip. My brother and his girlfriend got engaged over there while we were there.
Congratulations.
So congratulations to them.
But as you know, I was against all of that.
Yes.
I think, Dave, if you're going as a young man, how old is he?
Almost 24.
Oh, yeah. Way too early.
And he went to Sweden, and he took the girl. He brought a girl with him to Sweden.
Crazy.
Nobody does that.
No.
And then his mom now shows up.
That's even more.
You see, this is why the Graham family, much nicer boys, I'm sure, than the Bastel boys or the Richards clan.
Completely.
If my mom showed up and going, you get back on the plane. I don't know how you say it in Swedish. But you're getting back on that plane.
That's right. How much Swedish did you learn there?
Yeah.
I learned thank you, which is just tack.
I know. I said
Yeah.
I wrote him yesterday tack in a text message, and he didn't respond. So I assumed he didn't know what the hell I was writing.
And then thank you, kind of like thank you very much or whatever, is just taxamika.
That's fantastic.
These come in
that's
very
about
handy
it.
in a conversation. You didn't drop the humordu?
No, because everyone speaks English there.
Doesn't matter. So tell us about the girls then, because this is all we really care about.
Yeah.
Was
it a smoke show everywhere you went?
Yeah, there was some pretty good-looking people
Oh,
there,
good
for
God,
sure.
Just tell us the truth.
No, there was.
So
there,
did anything
there was-
happen? We don't care about. Did anything
no.
happen? Oh,
No,
that's great.
No, nothing.
So goose egg.
Did everybody recognize you and say, "Oh yes, Russell Graham"?
Oh, it looks like it's roast beef.
Yes. Did you get a lot of that?
I want a chunk of roast beef.
Just everywhere, everywhere,
There you-
worldwide fame.
There you go.
Roast beef melts in my mouth now. Roast beef.
Well, glad to have you back,
Glad to be back.
Devin. Just so you know that, because now he's a pal of yours, right?
Yeah, it goes to Ryerson with me, both going into 4th year this upcoming year. So our last one, and then we're done.
Okay. Well, he did obviously a fabulous show. You picked a great guy. You picked an awesome guy to do that. We got a chance to thank Devin.
That's right.
Because we just decided that Thursday, Friday,
We're off.
we're off.
Yep. Let's just say, roast beef, that Devin is kind of like our show's John Tavares. So it's it was a pretty good pickup.
Yeah, that didn't go over well. And silence from Russell.
But
Watch our mics all of a sudden start cutting out.
But Russell's our Connor Brown.
Okay, that's good.
That's good. What's wrong with Connor Brown?
Nothing wrong with Connor Brown.
Thank you. Affordable contract.
What, Russell,
scored 20 goals.
You're better than Connor Brown now?
See? I think he wanted to be a different player.
Yeah, he wanted.
I think he wanted to be 34.
Yeah, or little Marner talk. He kind of likes the Marner talk.
That too.
We know that. But it's great to have you back, Roast Beef. You're watching rawmike.richards.com on the dedicated YouTube channel or right on the website itself, rawmike.richards.com. Thanks so much for subscribing.
You know what the funniest part of that? Well, I'm thinking of a player. I'm trying to name
What did he
like
most be like?
No, but I'm trying to think of like a 3rd or 4th line guy, and it's like they don't really have a bad winger anymore.
No,
because they got rid of Matt Martin, which in my opinion, I don't think that's a great move. But whatever, he fit a role, right? But I'm trying to think of a winger.
You mean the only guy that's probably not afraid to do stuff?
Yeah. So, but man, okay. Bring on the season. Anytime October wants to come, it's not fast enough for me.
Yeah, well, and you know what they're, and again, in talking about the NHL, right? I mean, there really is almost no off season. But the one thing that I certainly was not expecting, and for Ray Emery, when we talked about him just earlier on about his passing, I mean, it's all over the internet, it's all over television. This is not new news necessarily, but in Hamilton Harbor, and the report, the only information that we really have, Dave, is that he dives off the boat or whatever at 6 a.m. But Hamilton Harbor, you're going to swim in Hamilton Harbor?
Yeah, why?
You wouldn't even. No way that. I don't know. It's just a very, very strange story on a guy that I don't know historically how he's going to be looked at, because I think he was played at a much higher level of goal than I think maybe he gets credited to, simply because he was a pretty colorful guy, wasn't really shy about saying things, and he liked to drop the gloves because actually he did like boxing. He could use his hands like legit, use his hands, and so I'm not sure what that looks like. Now, I see a lot of horrible things on this. I mean, what do you think social media is all about? I mean, this is where some real scumbags want to sit there and write some pretty horrible things. But in retrospect, I think for the most part, his teammates loved him.
Yes.
I mean, I think within that room, regardless of what fans think, which, by the way, doesn't really drive very many professional athletes. If it does, you're in big trouble. But for Ray Emery, you had some dealings because you actually covered the Sens in that 06-07 season.
Yeah, I covered the Senators for a full year when I was in Ottawa for a maternity leave. So that team included like a Danny Heatley, Daniel Alfredson, Jason Spezza in their prime, a Wade Redden when he was good,
Wow.
Zdeno Chara when he was about to go to Boston. John Muckler was the GM. Brian Murray was the head coach, which I love, and rest in peace, Brian Murray. Chris Neal, Brian McGrattan, guys like that. And I named some of the tough guys like McGrattan, Volchenkov on the point, Chris Phillips. All those tough guys, even the call-ups like Steve Martins and guys like that. Ray Emery was the toughest guy on the team. nobody ever wanted to F with Ray Emery, period. Ray Emery was usually very casual, very cool, very calm, cool cat. But when you pissed off Ray Emery on the ice, this was the toughest goaltender in the league in his day. Like, this was, the Ron Hextall of the 80s. The Ray Emery was it in the 2000s kind of thing. Like, there wasn't a better person than that in that aspect of it. And I know fighting isn't a goaltender's thing, but if you ever drop the gloves with him, all you have to do is look at some of the things he did. Andrew Peters comes to mind. This guy was lights out great in that department. He always was very casual in the dressing room in my dealings. He'd always comment on clothing because he was a very fashion-forward guy.
Absolutely was.
So anything I'd wear differently, or he'd always have a comment for. But I have nothing but respect for Ray Emery as a player. I didn't really know him as an individual because I don't hang out with players, but he was in a situation where him and Dominic Hasek shared the goaltender's crease. And you talk about, picking up for a Hall of Famer in front of him. Ray Emery was a starting goaltender in a backup role in Ottawa when I was there.
Well, you mentioned those that did not enjoy their time playing against Ray Emery. Braden Holtby.
Yes.
For instance.
Yeah. Ryan Miller, too.
They thought at some point, I guess it would be good to mix it up with Ray Emery, as you will see in this next video, as filmed by, I can only assume, a Flyers fan, that this did not go well for Braden Holtby. Oh my goodness. This guy got the best seats in the house.
I think so. The commentary is fantastic.
He sounds like the color guy from the Minnesota Vikings. Or no, that was the New England Patriots.
Yes. Scott Zolak.
Yeah. Once again, a lovely Christmas film for the kids, courtesy of the Philadelphia Flyers.
You don't see that often anymore, right?
That's old-time hockey.
That is old. And that's not that long ago.
No, I know.
Ray Emery's only 35 years old.
That wasn't 1972.
No. But you know what? If you darken the picture, take off the advertising on the boards, it would fit right in.
Yeah, so. Dennis Marut going, I remember that fight.
Dennis, you weren't even playing.
Yeah, exactly. Crazy. If you want to see how he played goal, this goes back to his Senators time. As I said, I think sometimes because of what you just saw in the previous clip, you might forget about this kind of stuff. And there it is, once again, the work of Ray Emery, gone at the age of 35. And I think about it, Dave, 35 is just so young. And
so much ahead of him, too. Exactly.
Well, and there'll be some details, obviously, coming forthcoming, I think, from
as
the Halton
Hamilton
today,
thing. Yeah, as early as today. You're right, because they're going to test. They're going to do tests on the body, and my first initial thought was, why are you swimming where you're swimming at that time of morning
it's
on
odd.
a Sunday?
Yeah.
Did something happen on Saturday that the night kept on going, or this is all speculation, of course, but
people don't go swimming in Hamilton Harbor, Dave.
Yeah,
they just
don't.
And you can walk across it or set it on fire.
It's true. And I just kind of sit there and I kind of, oh man, I don't know, but we will find out more. Of course, none of us were there, and
exactly. I mean, I know there's a lot of speculation, but look, folks, you're gonna have to wait on this one, and I think you can at least appreciate for those of his family members. Can we class it up a little bit? Because seriously, that's the one thing about social media is any lunatic with whatever they want to say can say it, and it's been pretty sick, some of it. Also, as we mentioned off the top of the hour, Senator Larry Smith.
Yes, sir.
You know what I just did there almost to the Montreal Canadiens when the guy's name's Larry? A Larry Robinson. A Robinson.
Could have been. Well, he's probably a Canadiens fan, too.
He probably is. We'll talk to him in a little over 10 minutes' time. I'm looking forward to that. And, of course, for Larry Smith himself, he was on some of the most amazing Montreal Alouette years. I think of, when the Big O comes in, when you look at Joe Barnes, when you look at, there was a level of excellence that Don Matthews, they all went through there, and of course the Marv Levy years. The Marv.
A lot of people forget about that too.
They do forget about it, Dave. And of course, a lot of people are saying, "What are you talking about?" No, Marv Levy was a significant coach in the Montreal Alouettes. Certainly in those years in the 1970s, they were very dominant. In amongst the Edmonton Eskimos, obviously being part of that group. The Big O as a kid. So the moment the 76 Olympics are over, as a CFL fan, I can't believe that I'm going to see a football stadium that is going to look like this. Mm-hmm. A football stadium that looks like the things that I see in the NFL. I just moved back from the States that year. This team in Montreal, they had some classic Grey Cup clashes again with teams like Edmonton, the snow, the game in the snow. But also, when you're talking about iconic teams of that time, Leo Cahill certainly was one of those coaches. Here is a matchup between the Montreal Alouettes and the Toronto Argonauts. This is Marv Levy versus Leo Cahill. This is an incredible moment in which you're going to see a future commissioner of the league and now a future senator, as he played for 9 years with those Montreal Alouettes. Significant, and he played mostly running back, but he did pretty much everything. And if you played on a Marv Levy team, and we'll ask him about this, you better come prepared. Once again, property of the Canadian Football League. And I got to say, this is just a great moment. Watch this clip.
Mike Wilson, one of the Georgia connections, certainly looking out there, hoping that the defense can get them the ball back and not give up any more points before halftime.
Barnes on first down. It's good to Larry Smith. A 7-yard gain of the Toronto 26. Smith has caught half a dozen on the season as he's worked in and out of the Montreal offensive lineup, very much in it right now.
And a concerned Leo Cahill right now.
Well, he should be.
He looks like he's got an Ottawa Rough Rider tie on.
So that's Don Chevrier and Dan Kepley doing this game for CBC.
Barnes intercepted in the end zone.
Watch this. Uh-oh.
Harris. He's going to take this all the way for a Toronto touchdown with 12 seconds left. You talk about a turnaround. Look at Leo Cahill. Yes, Leo, it's true.
Chevy, one of the great ones. But, Dave, there I saw a stadium. You're talking about 60, 70,000 people watching a game in the CFL at the time. We're talking even when it was packed, and Toronto would pack them in at the Exhibition Stadium. But to think that you could even get like 40 or 50 was big. 50 was big. And so you just had, obviously, Edmonton. They eventually get their stadium, but, Taylor Field. I mean, what did the Winnipeg Stadium hold normally? Were they about 30?
Yeah, 30 was pushing it, yeah.
Right, but
yeah.
packed to the rafters,
yes,
30.
Exactly, yeah. And then they'd expanded the end zones, both end zones for Grey Cups and stuff like that, like the last one I saw in Winnipeg, which was the Rocket Ishmael one, 1992. Argos Stampeders. Danny Barrett, the quarterback for the Stampeders, against the flash and dash of the Argos with Bruce McNall and John Candy and Wayne Gretzky on the sidelines. I still vividly remember sitting in the end zone in arguably the coldest outdoor sporting event I've ever been to.
John Candy on the sideline. His face was frozen.
Yes. Matt Dunnigan was the starting quarterback for the Argos that day.
He missed so much of that year, and Ricky Foggy played a lot of it.
That's right.
And the players said at halftime, they could hear him. It wouldn't be screaming because Matt doesn't scream. But when they were putting the needles into him to deaden the pain of that shoulder, I mean, he came out with that military Arlie Ermy haircut because he'd had the golden locks the whole year. And when he came out for business, he looked like it meant business. It really was a heroic and a magical season that I look back on that Grey Cup. And, of course, also famous for the 1991 beer can throw.
That's right.
Now, you said you know who that guy is.
Winnipeg knows Winnipeg, right? So.
People go, I wonder who did that. It was Tom. I was talking to him last night at the Legion. He said he was going to throw a beer can if the Rocket tries to return one.
Just missed him, too. Yeah. I know. The Rocket was so fast, he dodged a beer can from the 40th row.
Yeah. It was quite a throw in terms of beer can throws. Really and at first when I saw it, I thought it was a snowball.
Yeah, me too.
And then I'm like, oh no. That was a can. That was a beer can. It was but what it was worth. It was
surprisingly enough, it was a very pro Calgary crowd, which is weird because it's in Western Canada and they love Toronto. No, they don't. They hate them.
Mazzotti had a big game. We had Mazzotti in the studio.
Double eights.
He talked about that big catch he had because he was good too.
Very
People
good.
Forget how good. And you know what? It usually is about a lot of Canadian slot backs. And I look at the great ones that Calgary had. Before we get to Larry Smith in about 5 minutes or so, the one thing that you can say about, and I see a lot of different words, and I'm going to talk to Senator Larry Smith about the words used about the expansion. But the Grey Cup 1995 in Regina wasn't exactly a heat wave either. And it's the last time that they started doing the ridiculous, massive, put everybody in the end zone, as many people as they could get.
Yep.
Because the guy had a heart attack during that game, halftime. And they had to like body surfing at like a Foo Fighter concert.
I don't remember that.
Oh yeah,
really? Wow.
Like it was.
Yeah, sure.
But the thing, and I was always told about those end zone structures. Winnipeg, there might be a little bit of wind.
Just a tad.
That the thing was like.
Seriously.
It moved.
When you walked up the extra seats, you felt that, okay, is my next step going to be my last? Honestly, it was good. He's not supposed to do that, right?
Not supposed to be moving. No. So this is the then Baltimore Stallions and the Calgary Stampeders. The Grey Cup was 1995 in Regina. The quarterback for, not surprisingly, the Stamps at this time, Doug Flutie. But just maybe, if you do go back, Tracy Ham and this Baltimore team, which eventually becomes the great Montreal Alouette team.
That's right.
But boy, I'll tell you, the team they put together was fantastic. They win this Grey Cup in 1995, and it kind of shuts people up as to just how good some of these teams were south of the border.
First and 10 now from the 33-yard line. Over the middle to Gerald Alphin, and he has another.
There's another
first down.
Outstanding receiver.
The year with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on the Labor Day weekend was cut by Cal Murphy. Had some options, Memphis or Baltimore. Opted to sign with Baltimore, and they feel he takes
another late great voice, Dave.
Right.
Don Whitman.
Tracy reads this. Calgary does a little bit different in their drop. They drop Marvin Pope. You can see him spinning around. He doesn't see Joel Alphin, and Joel Alphin gets downfield quickly. Tracy hits him.
Throwing over the middle, and it was knocked down at the line of scrimmage.
See, these were the years where these Wally Buono Calgary Stampeder teams could have won, I'm saying at least in the 90s, at least 4 or 5 Grey Cups.
They were that good.
Get up the field. Once you feel your stall and you see the arm motion of the quarterback, get your hands up and get up high. Gets up that right hand, knocks it down, creates.
They had a lot of weapons, and they had a great defense in Baltimore. And this was, again, another, it seems like over and over again, an exceptional Calgary Stampeder team.
Ham completes the pass to Tui Pelotu, and he is going to be stopped short of the first down by McClanahan.
See, there were a lot of guys, too, that came
Now, it looks as though he's only about a yard shy, so Don Matthews.
Here's Don Matthews again.
Decision to make.
It seems like he won 47 Grey Cups. I know he didn't, but it just seems that way.
45 altogether.
You know, Coach Matthews over the years, a little bit of a gambler, and plus when you have the guys up front that average 300 pounds, 6'6", you better think you can get a yard. And you got Mike Pringle in the backfield.
In the I formation, they scatter. Tracy Ham will keep, and it looks as though he should have the first down, but it might.
Okay, I'm not sure if this is where we wanted to start it, because it seems there's a lot of plays that I would normally not show, Dave. The diving for a first down, the ball's knocked down. Seems a little
Calgary think they've stopped him.
odd. Okay, but that was, I think, to me, in some ways, a reflection on, I think, what they wanted to have happen south of the border. So in just a couple of minutes here, we're going to call Senator Larry Smith to get his take on really the genesis of this. And I'm going to go back, and just before we get to him, this is a very young Dutchie. This is a very young Darren Tradition when they talk about Larry Smith and this idea of expansion. And again, you gotta check this out. Here's a very young Darren Tradition talking about, and this is at halftime. Here's Commissioner Larry Smith talking about, and of course also seen on ESPN, on the Dose, Larry Smith.
Welcome back to McDonald's Halftime. We're glad you're with us. You know, his plan has always been expansion, his passion, the Canadian Football League. Commissioner Larry Smith has seen his share of troubled times with the league, but likes the horizon ahead.
Most of these centers have had the USFL, the World League of American Football, and the World Football League. So we have to sell staying power and consistency, and our owners know that. And so at first there's going to be a bit of skepticism, because people are going to say, oh, we've seen this all before. But once people realize that the league itself is 103, 104 years old, and we're not going to go anywhere, and whereas in the past it was the teams in these markets that succeeded and the league failed, it's a reverse situation this time where the league has succeeded and now these teams have to succeed. I think it'll be very interesting, but the fan reaction so far has been positive, and the real catch is when the people see our product. Because in Sacramento we may have only averaged 15,000 people a game, but for the people who saw our product, most of them all came up and said, you know, really difficult for us to go and see an NFL game after watching a CFL game. We took a vote about a year and a half ago to really enshrine our rules, because we feel that the rules are the key to the future of our business. And to change those rules, you'd have to have unanimous support. And as long as we have Canadian teams, there's always going to be one person who puts a hand up and say, no, I don't want to change. So I think we positioned ourselves to protect ourselves. I think that also it's important to understand that our American owners recognize that if they go in with a Me Too product, we're going to get killed, because let's face it, the NFL is very strong. We're selling a unique product. We're creating our own niche. We don't compete against the National Football League. We have to compete against ourselves.
Good morning.
That's what's important.
I would say bonjour, hello, como ça va, Senator Larry Smith. It's Mike Richards calling from rawmikeRichards.com.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
Well, I just saw a very young Larry Smith talking about the expansion in 94, 95, and what came out of that. And I will say this, Senator, I see these words describing that time, and it says ill-fated or failed. But to my way of thinking, at that time, it did have a huge infusion of cash that the league badly needed. We eventually get some great teams and players that come out of that, and the validation on the quality of football really, was verified when you had a Baltimore Stallion team that not only put a great Grey Cup together against the BC Lions in BC, but they beat an enormously talented Calgary Stampeder team led by Doug Flutie. They win in Regina. To me, that checks that box. That says to me that it wasn't necessarily, in retrospect, as bad as I think sometimes people make it out, Senator.
Well, it was a critical step in the history of the league to, I'm not going to say save the league, but when I first got involved as commissioner, I recognized that the league was in terrible shape. We had probably half of our franchises that were either failing or we had some questionable leadership in the franchises. and we didn't have any corporate sponsorship. We had a very small television contract. And the truth is, if it wasn't for the initiative of Gordon Craig and Jim Thompson, who were heading up TSN at the time, we would have been really kaput. So when you look at the spectrum and really what took place, in my mind, and I'm not saying this because I was in the slot, but it was troubled times, but a great opportunity, and the expansion did exactly what you said. It gave us some credibility in the States. We were able to sell Doug Flutie's name in the States with David Archer to get ESPN up to a higher level. We were able to get some penetration in the U.S. market, as small as it was. We were able to get a benefit as the exchange of referees. And I'm not sure if a lot of people recognize there's been an exchange with the CFL and the NFL with referees for, the last 10 or 15, 20 years because of our entrance into the United States. And so a lot of good things came out of it. And the only people who got the money from the franchise fees were the Canadian teams. And none of the Americans who joined us got any of that money. So, it was a very interesting time. So,
but as you said, vitally important. So I think, if you're able to go back in the time machine, knowing what you knew now, you would still do it again. Yes.
Yes, but in a different way. The truth of the matter is, when we started that experience, basically, and I'm not going to say I because I don't like saying I too many times, but I had no resources. Basically, one part-time person who was helping me with the expansion, and it was basically a free-for-all. And what we tried to do is set up a strategy at the beginning, and the strategy was quite simple: border point strategy. Our first opportunity was with Fred Anderson in Sacramento, but we wanted to be closer to Canada, and we focused on Portland. And we got involved with Peter Jacobson, the golf pro out of Portland. Peter was well known, and I was lucky enough to go and meet David Stern, who was the commissioner of the NBA at the time, and he helped give us some ideas of how we could possibly look at this opportunity. But he was very helpful. Gary Bettman actually was, I believe, working for David Stern at the time, if I remember correctly. But we had a border point strategy, so Portland, Syracuse, those type of places that were close to the Canadian border would really be opportunities. We realized after getting Fred Anderson involved with Sacramento, and Fred was an outstanding owner, that it was going to be other markets that stepped in also. And, of course, Baltimore with Jim Spiros stepped up, and Jim did a fantastic job of building or resurrecting football in Baltimore after the Colts had left. So when you look at the strategy itself, we didn't necessarily stay on point with the strategy in terms of specific markets, but we did have a plan that said, hey, let's try to get penetration in markets where we can get some critical mass and build something. And that's where we started.
And you certainly did. Senator Smith, it's David Bastel here. It's so good to talk to you this morning, and thank you for joining us. You kind of led to my question where Sacramento was part of it, San Antonio, Memphis, a lot of these cities, not border towns to Canada. And after a while, I know Sacramento was the first city that expanded. You had that one expansion, I believe it was in 1993. After that, did you have other companies or other businesses in the United States coming to you, or was there a little easier sell in 94 when you continued to expand up to 5 teams in 1995? Did they start coming to you instead of you coming to them as far as wanting a team in their city?
Well, you have to understand that at the time we were selling franchises for $3 million US. And so for people in the United States who are entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs jumped out of the woodwork. Yeah. And basically, if you understand the U.S. mentality, anything is possible in the U.S. Dreams are made in the U.S., and people were coming and visiting with us. And basically, $3 million and $10 million cash flow over and above, we can do that. And great entrepreneurialism, but there was a lot of people that were not necessarily as qualified or as competent or as credible as we thought. However, With the entry of Fred Anderson, who was with World Football League, Fred was a very, very credible and dignified man. And then we got Spiros involved with Baltimore, and with the success they had, they were averaging 40,000 people a game and put a great team together. It was easier, but the real issue was trying to get the critical mass and trying to get a real formal strategy, because it started to jump out of the woodwork. And the ability of getting border point towns such as Portland, the group in Portland were kicked the tires for quite a period of time, and then we had some people in Syracuse kicking some tires also. But you ended up going to bigger markets, and then you get the Arthur Williams down in Birmingham. And these were billionaires, Arthur Williams, Fred Smith from Federal Express. These were big-time hitters. And even Nick Maletti, the Las Vegas franchise turned out to be a disaster, but Nick Maletti and his group out of L.A. Raised over $6 million in 30 minutes in terms of capital, venture capital, to fund that franchise. The problem was they took the $3 million that they paid us, put it in their pockets, and they ran the franchise into the ground with $3 million in about 4 months. So, if you look back at the history, it was well-intentioned, and a lot of good things came out of it. But the fact of the matter is that we had very, very limited resources. So going back to your question, would you do it again? Absolutely. Would you do it again differently? Absolutely, because we have more knowledge this time than last time. But if you look at the CFL now, I think that Randy Ambrosie's really got the right strategy, and this goes back over 20 years. Get yourself into Halifax, into a major market in the East Coast, so you complement and have 10 teams, which gives you a fantastic league.
Senator, you certainly come to success. I would say sometimes my dad being a coach and a great educator, we learn along the way. And when I look at how your life has been, from coming to Bishops and then I think working under and playing for the great Marv Levy. I mean, I would think there are things that you learned in that period of time that you must carry today with you as a senator.
Well, I have to admit to you that I've had 3 people in my life who were mentors. One was Bruce Coulter, who just recently passed away at Bishops. And Bruce was just an outstanding coach, but a great person, and did so much to help young men develop and help me personally in my career to be able to get into the CFL. Marv Levy was just very similar to Bruce in terms of his demeanor. He was very balanced. He was thoughtful. Very intelligent, and just had a great love for our team. I had a business associate who helped me out in business and got me into John Labatt Limited, and was my next door neighbor, Terry McDonald, and I didn't even know it till after the headhunter called me. But people who help you in your life are so important. This is why I always say to players, get out, get involved in the community, and this is, of course, what we did in rebuilding the Alouettes. We got ourselves so heavily entrenched in the community that you help young people develop, and I think this is one of the key factors that helped me in my life, is give back to the community which you received when you were young.
I wanted to talk about something you just brought up when you brought up Randy Ambrosie and expansion, because we do hear talk that there will be a team in Halifax, and there's even some rumors that perhaps Quebec City or something of that nature. And now rewinding it back to the 90s, did you ever consider any expansion in Canada at that time with a Halifax or a New Brunswick or a Quebec City? I know it wasn't as big as a hotbed, especially the Quebec example, just because of what's happened in the CIS in that province. Was there ever any talk, maybe a Saskatoon, a second team in the province of Saskatchewan? Did any of this ever cross the table when you were the commissioner of the league?
Well, you just brought up Saskatoon. Saskatoon was a site that came into focus, not for very long.
Right.
Quebec City, of course, with the success of the Rouge et Or, and I spent time in Quebec City back in 1994. The challenge was you had Patrick Roy and Jacques Tanguay control hockey, amateur hockey, and college football. And they had a great gig going, and in terms of making sure that they were getting 16,000 people out to their football games. They didn't want to ever get involved with the CFL because they felt they'd lose control of that market. Quebec City, of course, is a very unique center, but have done a great job in building college football, and so we have to give kudos to the success of the Francophone community. And then it spread, of course, to University of Montreal, University of Sherbrooke, and when you see the quality of young Quebecers playing football, it's very impressive.
Is Rouge et Or, I'm sorry, is that an amateur team? Because I thought they were a professional team.
Yeah, good.
Well, yeah, if you look at the size of some of those kids playing, and what's so fantastic to see, honestly, is the quality of Canadian kids and the university system throughout Canada, how it's really improved over time. And I know that there's lots of discussion about concussion and injury, and people are skeptical sometimes about football, but it is a great character builder. Of course, education is so critical in terms of protecting players and making sure that you're not jeopardizing your life by playing. But, it's come a long way, and the kids themselves today very proud to see the evolution of the young Canadians in our country.
Because I could have swore Matthew Bertrand, when he was quarterback, I think he was 37. I said, how old? I think his kids are watching this game. I said, how can this be going on? But it is that kind of dominance that we've seen. And as you know very well, Senator, the grassroots football that happens in Quebec, just like it does in Western Canada, whether it be Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, of course, has a great one. So does BC, quite frankly. And it does lend itself to, I think, where we're sitting now. And, as you just mentioned, the Commissioner, Randy Ambrosie, the league, aside from probably some issues, maybe a little concern in Montreal, I don't know how panicky it is. I certainly would be more worried about what's happening in Toronto. But in terms of the rest of the league, the new stadiums that they have built, and I think sometimes the level of play and the attendance, I think, speaking, it's maybe the healthiest it's ever been.
Well, I would say that the CFL goes through cycles. If you remember back in the early 80s, Doug Mitchell got I believe it was a $33 million TV contract over 3 years, which was huge at the time. And with the peak of the 70s, with the expansion of the Olympic Stadium, with the Commonwealth, you had, and of course in Toronto with the Sky Dome. But you had the peak period in that late 70s, early 80s, and then all of a sudden the down period, and that came in just before I took over as commissioner. And being aware of where the league was at, it's always had its ups and downs. And I would have to agree with you, at this time you're at a high, but at the same time there's more work to be done. You have to make sure that in Montreal you're going to get the type of play that's going to generate fan support. The good news for the Alouettes, and it's not good news, is that you have the Canadians that are having some frustrations, and the soccer team, the Impact, that is not necessarily playing at its highest level. That's not a good omen when you have three teams that are struggling in a market that demands excellence. And Toronto, you'd mentioned the difficulties they have. The good news about Toronto is you have very powerful people involved with that franchise who have deep pockets, and I think it's a matter of time. Jim Spiros and Mark Trestman are two excellent individuals, and they will get the players in place. So when you look at the other teams in Saskatchewan to do what it did and build that beautiful stadium, it just shows that the quality of people in that province and the I guess the belief in what they can do to be better. And it's just a fantastic experience. And so yes, the league is at a point, but it has to keep going, because you understand television controls sport. And television in Canada still, I don't believe we're much more than 13 or 14 million television sets in our country. And when you compare it to the size of the American market, it is more than a 10-to-1 difference in terms of size and capacity. Television drives sport, and the key is being able to get that market and grow that market.
Senator Smith, when you look back at your career and being the CFL commissioner for as long as you were, and now being the official leader of the opposition in the Senate, is there anything that, and I'm trying to link up the two because I see some comparisons, but of course I've never been in either one of these positions that you have. Do you see anything that you've taken out of being a commissioner of a league into now, being a senator and being an official opposition leader of the Senate? And what sort of things do you deal with on a day-to-day basis that kind of link you back to your football background and your business background, because it's quite the resume that you have built up?
Well, when you play on a team and spend so much of your life playing with other individuals, you'll learn a little bit about values, and you'll learn a little bit about teamwork and understanding goals and objectives, and that's been very helpful in my life. I applied for the CFL commissioner's job because I honestly believed at the time that I could do something to help the league. I knew the league was in big trouble, and I said, I'd rather be at the helm of the ship than have somebody else there who may not be as strong or could do what I could do. And that's not an arrogant statement. It was just a belief. And so part of your life is you develop belief systems and you get yourself dedicated to causes. And to me, the CFL was a cause. A little anecdote. I had lunch the first or second day as commissioner with a fellow named Donald Crump, not Trump, Crump. And he was Harold Ballard's accountant. And he was the commissioner before I started. He wasn't commissioner for very long. But he passed on a very interesting comment. He said, "Commissioner," he said, "I've got a recommendation for you." And I said, "What's that, sir?" And because I was very thankful that he would spend time with me. He said, "Don't make any decisions." And I said, "I beg your pardon." And he said, "Don't make any decisions." And I understood the message. There was a subliminal message there. And his message was, don't make any decisions, because every decision you make, you will use social capital. So going in, I knew that any decision that I made, it would be like drinking water out of a glass, which is my social capital. And I also knew that if I could last 5 years as commissioner, it would be a miracle in the context of where the CFL was at. But it was sort of maybe a dedication to the cause, because I had such a great time as a player with my friends who I still have, who were former players, that it was something I wanted to do. And when you look at politics, Canada is such a great country, and getting involved with politics was something I thought about long and hard early in my life. I never really did at the time because I had a family, and I had to bring up my family. But at the same time, getting involved with politics, my objective is very simple: help make Canada a better place. There's no personal gain for me in this deal. And being leader of the opposition, it's trying to mobilize people and make sure that people are consistent in their thought process and think things through, because there's a lot of emotion in politics. And but it's a great experience. I'm so proud and honored to have the opportunity to participate.
Well, Senator, it's been fantastic having you on the show this morning, covering many, many topics. But there's the one thing that I have not asked, and I thought, boy, if I ever see Larry Smith, I got to ask him about this one. So when Brad goes on The Bachelor, did you know they were coming to your house?
Well, when Brad went on The Bachelor, it was a very interesting experience, and a great one for Brad, because he was in theater as a young guy, and when they came to the house, they did sort of take over the house, but it was something that Lisa and I will never forget. And for Brad, it turned out to be a great experience. Unfortunately, he and Bianca didn't stay together, but it was one of those things that I think he learned a lot of life lessons through that deal.
Love it.
That's a pretty diplomatic answer, eh?
Oh, there you go. That's why you chose that job. Good for you, Senator. Thanks so much. It's been a real pleasure and certainly fun for both Dave, myself, all the viewers and the listeners, getting a little inside take on the decisions at the time and the decisions you're currently making. It's been a wonderful morning, and I thank you so much, Larry, for joining us here today.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you.
That is Senator Larry Smith joining us here today on rawmikeRichards.com. And I've always certainly respected literally everything that he has done, because most of it, most people wouldn't do what he has done. I mean, do you want to be commissioner of the CFL? After Donald Crump, and I do remember, he looked exactly like Homer Simpson with glasses.
Yeah, you're right.
He looked like Homer, and he never spoke, as just verified by Senator Larry Smith. And you want to take over at that time, and then you decide you're going to take the Canadian Football League and go into the United States.
He's being very modest when he says that he wasn't necessarily the one that saved. I personally think he did.
He did.
I think Larry Smith did save the CFL. and I thought it was a memorable aspect of the CFL's illustrious, history. When you look back at it and you think of it, and I know we've talked about it countless times, so I thought this has to be a guest on our show because of what happened to the league that we all love and how it bettered it, even though there was some hiccups along the way. But what it did at that time, because being a Bomber fan, every single year Cal Murphy would roll up. This franchise is in trouble. The Bombers could be folding. This money was pumped into this system, and it wasn't just that. There was a Save the Stampeders campaign.
Oh yes,
the Saskatchewan Roughriders were going to fold up tent too.
There were lotteries at times, and there were telethons.
So
it scared the crap out of me back in those days.
There could have been a time where the entire league would have closed shop if something like this did not happen, and the money that was infused into the pockets of CFL teams that badly needed it. And I think this, we talked to a Hall of Fame guest at every level, and no doubt, Hall of Fame life. I mean, you look at that resume from top to bottom.
Well,
just amazing.
You know what? If we do get a chance, I'd love to have Marv Levy on the show, because when you hear his voice, there is such command behind it.
Yes.
There is such depth of knowledge, and it just earns respect. Because when he talks to you, should it be a little jolting, because he gets very passionate. He's a very well-read man too, by the way, very, very educated man. Boy, you just stay in your place, and he would be wonderful to talk to as well. Here's something else. If I look back at 93, 94, 95, the Ticats at times were getting 12 and 13,000 people. We saw what was happening out of all places. People can't even get around their heads about Regina being in trouble because of what you see now, with maybe the most spectacular, unbelievable stadium I would never think would end up on my television. But here's yet another thing I wouldn't think I would have saw back in 93. That the Saskatchewan Roughriders would be playing the Calgary Stampeders, featured in a video game, NCAA, and this is what I don't get, NCAA 14. NCAA 14. Is it me? Do I think this is normal? And look at the detail. This is unbelievable. I wonder who wins.
Both teams are lining up for the kickoff, and we're just about set to get this one underway.
Look at the stadium. What? Here's kickoff.
And with that, we kick off our season. He's to the 20. Makes it out to maybe the 19-yard line.
I think there's a lot of emotion involved right now from the fan standpoint.
Darren Durant's quarterback. This is weird. Have you seen this?
I have not.
This is bizarre. Look at the stadium. So there's the guy making his plays. I'm not sure who it is. A lot of pressure in these games. Do you like the football games? Do you play football?
Love it. I just don't do it that often. Don't have time.
Kids.
Leads the team
children.
Field for the first drive.
See, I'm fascinated by this stuff. Oh, that looks like a first down.
Tackle made at the 33-yard line.
Getting the ball to your tight end and allowing him to make plays in the passing game can really open things up on the outside for your real speedsters.
Well, I think Chris Jones must have. Well, no, this is Chamberlain. Corey
Chamberlain,
yep. At this point.
That's right. Interesting, the usage of the name tight end.
From their own
33-yard line. Do you notice there's no usage of any of their names?
No, I was going to say. That would be a slot back.
And I can admit, Darren Durant in this looks very healthy. Oh, except for that.
Back to the line.
As a running back, you've got to get upfield north and south. That time, he just seemed to wait.
And they also put, do you notice? They put them in the Sun Belt. Thanks for that. They put the CFL teams in the Sun Belt.
That's what Canada's known for, right? Great weather during the football season.
I'll tell you what they're known for. Calgary Stampede. The Calgary Stampede. The Chuck Wagon races. I know people are like, what are you, crazy? Yeah, you watch this. So my good friend Mark Sutherland is in the top 4. So as I said, like NASCAR, except at the end of the week of racing, the 9 heats, you get a semifinal, and then you have the dash for cash. $100,000, including Kurt Bensmiller, who has literally been almost the fastest single guy every night. For those that didn't see the Chuck final, let's go up to Les.
There's the horn in the $100,000 dash for cash at the 2018 GMC Rangeland Derby is out of town with the barrels standing, and Kurt Bensmiller, versatile energy to the inside of the game.
Now, in the interior of that, there's suites in there that you can get in the infield, and that's where you can have drinks, like a lot of drinks. First time I ever saw it, there was no rye left.
Sutherland.
They're like, sir, are you going to leave? No.
Arizona, but it's Kurt Bensmiller, versatile energy, streaks to the lead as we've seen him do so many times this week. Jason Glass has got company coming.
So if you're not, initiated into what this, if you've got the one barrel like Kurt did, that means you pretty much have the fastest time. And once you make that early turn, as long as the outriders don't knock a barrel over, so there's no penalties, you ride the rail like this. It's really tough to beat.
Calgary, it's your turn to come alive. Here comes the Duke of Newbury, Kurt Bensmiller. Here comes Chance Vigen and Jason Glass. Chance Vigen with a late charge. It is the Duke of Newbury, wire to wire with his wheels on fire. Kurt Bensmiller, a horse length ahead of Chance Vigen, a half a length ahead of Jason Glass and Mark Sutherland. Air Canada has landed on runway 4, and that's a wrap in the GMC Rangeland Derby.
There it was once again from Sunday night. My buddy coming. Technically, he comes in third, but that was again. That's the event, Dave. That I was literally a groupie. That's why I went to Pinoka or Strathmore. It didn't matter where it was.
It's a good time.
I went there.
It really is.
It is. It is. If you have not been, and you want it like a bucket list thing, just to have the greatest time of your life with the best people that you're ever going to meet, then you go to Alberta, you go to Calgary, you go during the Calgary Stampede. You're watching RawMikeRichards.com, either on the website or the dedicated YouTube channel. Now, I do have to ask Dave, because I'm going to show you a clip of something very exciting.
Yes, sir.
What did you do on your weekend there?
Weekend?
What happened for you? I imagine a lot of swimming with the girls.
Yeah, a
up
lot
front?
of swimming. We went to a pool in our community area where it wasn't that packed, actually. It was nice that because I thought for sure, considering that Toronto's going through hell as far as temperatures are concerned, it would be packed. It wasn't, so that was great. And then just barbecues and regular weekend stuff that we do with the family. So everything good.
I did a little golfing, which
did.
Probably surprised you.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially in this heat. Mind
Well,
you,
actually,
you are coming off a pretty good tournament.
That was a good tournament.
Yeah.
We had a good showing, but this is a different kind of golf. This is Golf Clash. You play on your phone.
Sounds good.
But I think the people go, well, how'd you play in the weekend? Well, let's take a look. I believe this is the fourth hole. This is me trying to decide what club to use. I'm looking at a wedge, and I need to get this thing close. You can hear it's a beautiful, beautiful day on the golf course. And here I go. Need to get this thing close.
Great shot!
Thank you.
Eagle.
In your life.
Oh my, that is something. That's please. Oh boy, look at all the tweets now. Congratulations, you're the best. Do you want to sleep with my wife? Like all these kinds of things.
Good reaction.
Yeah, there's something from the Olsen twins I can't read.
Yeah.
Boy, just amazing. Cindy Crawford, you stop it, you. You're a pretty girl. No, you're the prettiest one. Okay. Oh, I could go on, Dave.
Agreed.
Yeah. Do you play any of that stuff? I never. You don't. But I'm telling you right now.
I don't.
Don't play it, because you'll never.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah. You're supposed to be doing, like, when we have to clean the house this weekend. Yeah, whatever. And then you'll hear.
There's always that. You know that.
Birdie. Says, what is that down? What is that noise downstairs? Oh, I don't know. I think
there must be a bird in the house.
I think someone's watching TV and a really good guy's playing golf.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so don't do that. The Blue Jays and boy, I got to tell you, people make a lot of getting yelled at when it comes to exchanges. When you're the beat reporter, sometimes it gets a little testy.
Yep.
Do you ever have anyone that went off on you?
You always have.
Because it's a relationship,
run-ins.
right?
Yeah. You always have run-ins. Jason Blake and I had a couple back and forths. Let's see. Brian McCabe and I had a couple back and forths. The big one was Mike Sullivan, though. The day after Joe Thornton was traded, Sullivan was in Calgary at the time, and Mike O'Connell, the general manager of the Bruins at the time, pulls off this massive trade. Jumbo goes to the Sharks, and we know what happened there. They clearly got ripped off, and I decided that I was going to approach him about let's see, the best way of saying it is that the Boston Bruins may not have gotten as much in return as I thought they would get for a first-round draft pick and the center of their franchise to be. And Mike Sullivan disagreed with me. So
yeah, I bet everyone else, all the other reporters are going, "Oh, this is going to be good."
Yes, Roger Millions came up to me and said, "Thanks for giving me the clip of the year." It's so true. You could probably Google it somewhere, but yeah, Sullivan kind of freaked out because I truly think, looking at him while I was approaching the topic, if we don't have any cameras around and it's just you and I, he says to me, "We lost that trade." We lost that trade because they clearly did. Just go back and Google what the Bruins got for Jumbo Thornton and tell me I'm wrong, because I'm not.
See, Marcus Stroman went off on Arash Madani.
Yes.
And so it even made it to the Twitterverse. But from what I understand, it had to do with a question that he asked back in 2000 or a situation.
Not that he remembers these things.
Like 2012?
Yeah.
In Vancouver.
Interesting.
And he thought, what is that all about? But so he kind of walks away like a lot of guys do in the beginning. Like what stupid question. Anything else? Anything but the game? No. But then he came back. And
that was a mistake there.
Then he came back.
Yeah.
And so I really don't read much into it. I don't think the organization really, one way or the other, doesn't care, even if it was profanity laced. I think Arash Madani, who's been around for a long time, we both know him really well, he takes the beating, and you kind of move on. I don't see this as any kind of situation.
It's funny though, Mike, this sort of situation, if it's in the 80s or 90s, the player probably comes out today and apologizes for it. Today, nothing. It's just the difference between what was and what is. Marcus Stroman's mistake was returning to the scene. He said what he said at the beginning, leaves. That's where it should have closed. And that's why this is what it is today.
See, and if it's me and I asked a question like you did, which is a valid question, and let's say it is a valid question, the thing that I don't think I could take, this going back to Todd Stottlemyre.
Oh, this is a good one. There's a multiple good ones. Baseball seems to do this every once in a while.
Baseball's got one, just because I think it's such a passive sport.
Yep.
Maybe there's a lot of built-up tension,
Sure
and especially for a pitcher. This is another pitcher. This is after he left, so he leaves the Blue Jays.
And by the way, just on your point, out of all the sports I've covered, and I've covered basically every single league in North America, by far the biggest jerks as a whole, Major League Baseball.
And I think everyone would agree with you. But what happens if the guy starts to have a rant and his voice kind of goes funny as he's yelling? Todd Stottlemyre, if he does this to me, halfway in between, Dave.
You're laughing?
Well, why are you yelling at me like Curly from the Three Stooges? I mean,
is that what we're going to do? We're going to talk about every time before I lose my cool one time, and we're going to talk about it? Huh? Is that what we're going to do? I threw one pitch, all right? I lost my cool, and we're going to talk about it? Huh? I busted my ass out there. I did every thing I can. You think I'm pissed? I'm pissed. All right? Right, I'm pissed. Right, I lost my cool because I did. I lost my cool. Are you happy?
Yeah. No, we're good now.
I just lost it again. Yeah. I'm pissed.
Yeah.
I'm pissed.
Yeah, good luck on your next
job out there. You get pissed when something happens to your job? That's my job. That's my living. I'm pissed. Right, I'm pissed. Right,
Do you think you pitched poorly? I don't know what that was.
Those are the situations where you calmly, and it has to be a short rebuttal. Is there something wrong with your voice? Just if you want to add gasoline to it.
Have you ever done Shakespeare? Because I got to tell you.
What? And a rule to all you journalists and media people out there. Get your cameraman to always roll.
Yeah, roll.
Never press pause or stop. You roll it until you're walking into the parking lot.
That's for all the kids out there.
Yep.
For everyone listening.
Full free.
That's what you get from the show. That's what you get from Raw Mike Richards and Dave Bastel. Life lessons. Just ask Russell, who apparently on his trip to Sweden, surprisingly and much to our chagrin, got absolutely nothing.
Let's take the river to Rockford.
Not even necking? No? No. He said, well, when my mom showed up. Okay. Hey, Elvis. Hey, Elvis, we need to take it down a notch. Thanks to Senator Larry Smith. You're so awesome. That was a great time today.
It was awesome.
Yeah. A very humble guy.
Jeff Manishin tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.